What is it about Spyro's world that's such a vibe? I mean, this game is colorful, comforting, uncanny, dreamlike, and even nightmarish all at once, so I don't think anyone can quite put their finger on it. But after thousands of hours exploring this game, I think I've found some hidden corners that really capture this strange feeling. So today, I want to give you a tour of some of my favorite places in this game. From simple, easy-to-reach spots that make us feel warm and nostalgic, to hard-to-reach corners of this world that give us a whole new perspective, even going to impossible places through hacking that you could only dream of when you were a kid. Let's begin. And what better place to start than the beginning? Artisan's Homeworld. How relaxing. Peaceful. When I was a kid, my first 3 games were this, Crash 2, and Toy Story 2. I bring it up because those games start off way more intense than this. They have a sense of urgency from the get-go, with intense sound effects and the immediate danger of death within the first few moments. But this game, it felt nice, less scary, less oppressive. I had room to breathe and explore. Even the enemies run away from you here, which is just such a hilarious touch. But let's tread a little deeper now, into maybe the most nostalgic, warm, comforting level of the entire game, Dark Hollow. How about these fires? What's going on with them? I always thought they unlocked some kind of secret as a kid, but no, you can just ignore them. But why would you? After everything is collected in the level, there's always a campfire for you to light and stand beside. And although it's out of the scope of this video, I have to give props to the remake, Reignited Trilogy's interpretation of this level. Adding in all these ancient, whimsical libraries and bookshelves to the level just add to the whole whimsical, warm, enveloping feeling of it. Okay, enough of this wishy-washy bullshit. You want to see something cool? You can jump out of bounds right here to find this secret area obscured by the main level. You can even roll down this hill just before the edge of the entire world. I love this. It makes you feel powerful, like it's the big boy version of hanging out by the fires down below. Let's move on to the next homeworld, but before I do, I have to give you a compilation of some of the weirdest, unusual spots you can reach in the rest of the Artisan's Homeworld. Check it out. The second homeworld, Peacekeepers, offers a shift in tone from something playful and inviting to something a little bit more gray and violent even. I like standing here and watching these two guys shoot cannonballs into each other's things, like they still keep it lighthearted despite the increase in aggression. Dry Canyon has this one spot before the secret area, with 3 gems pointing you in the direction you're supposed to jump. You don't really see this anywhere else in the game. Like, there's other areas in the game like this that are obscured by a wall that you need to take a blind jump for, but they're not really aided by gems in this way, so I find it to be quite unique. And if you really want to go above and beyond here, you can try damage boosting to reach the upper ceiling of this level, unlocking a whole new exploration with a weird out-of-bounds area, a little rock hanging in what seems to be just complete nothingness. And Dr. Shemp has more of these weird roof-like areas that you're not intended to reach. They really recontextualize the entire level, being able to see it all from one perch. The world looks so much bigger from the ground. Like the Dr. Shemp fight. From this roof right here, he just looks like an innocent little lima bean. But from down below, he looks fucking giant, like even one of his sandals is the size of Spyro himself. I have to mention this little crevasse in Ice Cavern. If you hold X, you can actually stay rolling infinitely during it and see a weird black orb flying across the screen periodically. This is thought to be one of the stars from the skybox incorrectly translated across the PlayStation Z buffer. In other words, the devs didn't think you would get this low, so the sky literally distorts around you in the haze. There's a metaphor in there about your dreams, the stars in your sky, being closer to you than you really think. And while I'm talking about distortions, have you ever noticed that if you stand in front of a portal and move the camera along the face of the portal, it'll start to stretch and meld with your camera? It's a gentle reminder that the things you see in this world aren't quite what they seem. But let's not get too philosophical here. Let's go back to something familiar and nostalgic. Those damn force fields in Stonehill and Clifftown. What's going on with those? They only exist in 2 levels, and yet they stick out in our mind, like everyone who's played this game has wanted to cross over to the other side of those portals. So, what do you say we entertain that and go to the other side? Well, here we are, and I can't help but notice that this area is pretty vast in both levels. You can even almost go behind the waterfall in Clifftown. But despite that, it feels a bit underwhelming, like my imagination growing up took me to so many different places in my dreams as I thought about these areas, what lied beyond off into the distant horizon. Well, it shouldn't surprise you that it's just an edge and some rolling hills, but it still feels cool to stand behind some of those hills, knowing that no one else has ever really been there before. Well, let's move on to the next homeworld, and aesthetically speaking, this one has to be my favorite. There's something enchanting about the rolling, cascading mountains towering above you, as if they kind of want you to try to explore and find a way to reach them. Check out this spot on top of the waterfall in the homeworld. Isn't it special? Like any place you can stand that appears like lava moving below you, that you can just hang out on, it's just kind of cool. As a little bonus, you can get your camera stuck and get inside of Spyro's head, whoa. But let me digress once again from my out-of-boundsy shenanigans. Let's venture into High Caves and encounter one of the scariest enemies in the entire game. But not before we do a quick compilation of some of the most iconic perches from this game. I told you those guys were scary. But what is it about them that makes them such nightmare fuel? It's just an artifact of PlayStation 1 era coding and modeling that some enemies just look like the biggest abominations humanity has ever conceived, far more horrifying than anything you'd see in a AAA game today. But to be honest, I think these low-poly nightmare enemies add a lot to the dreamlike atmosphere of the game. In fact, as you progress, the world here becomes more fantastical and uncanny around you. Weirder enemies and bigger gaps and voids to traverse. By the time you reach Dreamweavers, the world as you know it has all but literally fallen apart around you. I mean, that's just some creepy pasta shit right there. So let's move on here and talk about the aesthetics of Beastmakers. This homeworld is sludgy, a big change of pace from the bright mountains of Magic Crafters into something more swampy, something a little bit grosser, a little bit sludgier, smellier. Still, the towering stone architecture in Beastmakers leads you to believe that you're a part of an ancient civilization that has been lost to time, giving you big perches to look out into the muggy distance and even fly out to tree stumps that are sitting out in the muck. The best way to explore this homeworld is using an invincibility glitch, running around the green Mountain Dew, and going to certain logs that you would almost never see from the main level. These are uniquely liminal spaces that just make you feel Treetops is a unique level, being the only one in the game that's intended as a supercharge heavy exploration, where doing secret strategies and chasing down the thieves leads you to whole new parts of the level. One of these sections is an island off in the distance, and as it approaches the skybox, it feels so uniquely separated from everything. Just as the log stumps made you feel in the homeworld, this island makes you feel strangely secluded, which is another aspect in Misty Bog for one particular island that serves almost no purpose at all. I'm not talking about the island with all the enemies, I'm talking about the island right next to it, that has nothing on it but a little hut that you can't interact with. What's the deal with this thing? Everything about this homeworld and these strange places within it make you feel isolated. I'm not sure if there was any intent behind that from the developers, but it's just an odd continuity between it all. Man, this game really is turning into a creepypasta, so let's try to shake this uneasy feeling by moving on to Dreamweavers. You know, the developers really took the reins off in this homeworld. They're not trying to baby you through, they're giving everything they can to you. All sorts of weird enemies, unusual level design, and fantastical skyboxes that seem to be flipped upside down and all around. Speaking of skyboxes, let me show you a quick gradient of all of them from the beginning to the end. One of my favorite rooms in this level is in Haunted Towers. At the very top of the secret area that you can only reach by supercharging, you're greeted to a gorgeous foyer, arched, curved roofing that doesn't quite encapsulate the entire room. You can still see beyond it into the sky. It's just such a treat to look up and around you in a room like this, and it's a gentle reminder that there are so many places like this throughout the game that you may have just been charging through or focused on all the enemies or gems on the ground when really the beauty is all around you. We can see shades of this fantastical interior design in Lofty Castle. Some of these areas require you to curve and spiral all around the room to unlock wind tunnels to ascend and descend throughout. You know, they could have just put stairs there, but that's no fun. Spyro can fly, so why not take advantage of it in such a dreamlike space? By far, the best way to explore this level is to do a supercharged damage boost, which only requires you to bonk on this wall and get shot by an enemy, but by doing so you're launched up hundreds of feet into the air and get a sense of scale from the level. It is still so large, and yet these towering big monoliths around you seem to dwarf as you can land on top of them for more of these curved archways and beautiful senses of scale that you just don't get from the ground level. But to bring things back to the ground level here, what's going on with the enemies at this point? Like, we've been so conditioned to just accept whatever crazy fantasy is before us. Like, these are flying fucking turkeys, for Christ's sake. And we were conditioned at the start of the game to think that most enemies would be little pudgy green guys with swords. I mean, how far have we come by this point? In the final level of this homeworld, Jock, we start to see some of the real nightmarish vibes really come to fruition. Dark red skies and blistering lava, unescapable voids, and weird amalgamation type characters that are just so uncanny and unnerving. Little jesters laughing at you and stuff. It's all just quite overstimulating and unsettling. But yet there's still a warmth here, a sort of comforting, enveloping blanket that's caused by some of that light keyboard music that we felt all the way back in Dark Hollow. This game isn't your enemy, but it's also something completely unreal. As we move on to the final homeworld of Nasty Norc, we're treated to a breath of fresh air in this sense, a gauntlet of levels to be completed in order. It's like, oh, thank goodness, this is like a normal game again. I'm not having a bit of an existential dread as I'm playing, but of course, they left the hardest levels for last, and some of the most underdeveloped levels as well. Let's take a look at Norc Cove for a second. So this level was originally intended to have a boat that you would ride from ship to ship and landmark to landmark, but since this game was developed under a time crunch, it ended up becoming an amalgamation of these different boats and under-optimized sections, causing quite a bit of lag and explosions from all the different particle effects and loading zones on screen. A great way to visualize this is by using the help of one of the TNT guys to bounce you up onto these mountains here. Of course, you can walk around on them, and what you'll find is that in some sections the game lags so hard that it'll drop your inputs and even crash depending on the platform you're playing on. Let's move on to Twilight Harbor, but not before taking a look out into the horizon. I mean, this homeworld is pretty simple, but there is a beauty in that simplicity, and to think that this ocean just goes on forever, I mean, it kind of reminds you of other open world games of the time. Elder Scrolls, Grand Theft Auto. You ever try to just swim out as far as you can? This area kind of reminds me of that feeling. Well, anyway, Twilight Harbor is one of the most interesting places to find odd and unusual places in because of the supercharge ramp within it. You can abuse this mechanic to get on top of all of the roofs and go off to that weird lava waterfall behind you and even reach the lighthouse that's in the middle of the level. When you get up next to it, you can see there's actually a lighting effect that goes around the whole thing, but there's a weird circular texture on it. I mean, it's just something you know wasn't intended to be looked at from close up like that. So let's savor this moment before moving on to the final boss. We are approaching the end of our playthrough after all. You know, there is a cool little secret about Nasty's loot, the extra level at the end. And this also applies to the flight levels. If you mash X while flying, you can actually reach above the height cap so long as you're pushing up against an upward wall. You can do this to get out of bounds and see some of the coolest places in the entire game. In fact, my favorite spot is right here on top of this observatory in the very final level. How cool is that? Well, we've seen the sights that we're going to see here, so it's time to finish it off. Let's go to Nasty Norc. In this level, you really just go through the motions of killing thieves and following down Nasty, but once you reach his obstacle course, there's a couple of weird places you can reach. Has anybody ever fallen down into this area before? I know I have. What's the deal with this, man? These areas that you can't escape without dying are some of the most odd liminal spaces in the whole game. Or what about on top of these other hard-to-reach little perches on the machinery all around him? Such an odd alternate way of looking at the level, again scaling down the largeness of Nasty by being above him. Well, it's time to chase him down in the final lava room, but let's not be so quick to flame him at the very end. Did you know if you stand at the edge of his standing platform here that he won't even shoot you at all? You have a bit of a stare down with him. It's very unnerving. Even as you run around him and jump above his half-hearted shots at you, you realize he's not so scary. In fact, he may not even be the bad guy at all. You know, we've gone through this whole game and essentially committed genocide on every one of these creatures that is laid before us. And here we are with a big green garbanzo that's absolutely scared shitless of us.
You ain't gonna do shit.
What left do we have to do but destroy him as well to complete our genocide run? It's a very lackluster feeling you're left at the end of the game, wishing maybe for something a little bit more. I know I did as a casual player, but something interesting happens on the 120% ending of this game. After having collected everything, Spyro being proud of himself in the cutscene, the very final thing that happens is all of the dragons get turned to crystal again. A funny subversion of expectations, sure, but I'm gonna be like Canadian Guy A here and read way too deeply into this. I think the developers want you to play the game again and again, infinitely, to complete this cycle of freeing dragons and resealing them again. Why? I think it's to help find those weird niche corners of the game that we talked about in this video, to illuminate some of the things that have passed you by as a kid, that have subverted your expectations and really made you look at something that was just a simple childhood piece of media and really read something deeper from it. I think that's what this whole video is all about. Like, what is the deeper meaning of some of these game worlds? Why do they make us feel the way they do? I think replaying an old game is not clinging on to nostalgia, but rather blazing a new path of understanding for who you really are. These games shaped many of us as kids, and now here all these years later, they continue to have an impact on our lives. By looking into these deep corners of the game, we can start to get a sense of what was really happening behind the scenes, and I just think that's so cool. So if you enjoyed this video, I just want to say thank you for watching all the way to the end, and if you have any particular experience with this game that you find nostalgic or any cool places that you liked, please share them in the comments below. I really like making a video like this, and if you want to see one for Spyro 2 or 3 or even a retrospective on Reignited Trilogy, I'm highly considering maybe dipping my feet into that. Until then, thank you for watching and keep on Spyroing. I'll catch you guys in the next one.